I want to extend my welcome again to each and every one of you. It's so wonderful to see you folks. The basis of the message this morning will be taken from the lectionary reading in Acts chapter 2, mostly from verses 22 to 32. But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them. Fellow Israelites, listen to what I have to say. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with deeds of power, wonders, and signs that God did through him among you, as you yourselves know. This man, handed over to you according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of those outside the law. But God raised him up, having released him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for him to be held in its power. For David says concerning him, I saw the Lord always before me, for he is at my right hand, so that I will not be shaken. Therefore my heart was glad, and my tongue rejoiced. Moreover, my flesh will live in hope. For you will not abandon my soul to Hades, or let your Holy One experience corruption. You have made known to me the ways of life. You will make me full of gladness with your presence. Fellow Israelites, I may say to you confidently of our ancestor David that he both died and was buried, and his tomb is with us to this day. Since he was a prophet, he knew that God had sworn with an oath to him that he would put one of his descendants on his throne. Foreseeing this, David spoke of the resurrection of the Messiah, saying, he was not abandoned to Hades, nor did his flesh experience corruption. This Jesus God raised up, and of that all of us are eyewitnesses. So here we have in this wonderful book of Acts, which is like a history of the earliest part of the church after Jesus departed, a great and encouraging message, because yesterday week when we celebrated Easter, the gloriousness is just almost overwhelming. But the church is small and afraid because many perils continue for their existence. And yet Peter here, clearly the leader of Jesus' closest band of followers after Jesus left, is giving an encouraging talk. He's trying to remind them of the significance of the moment, of who they are, where they are, and the great hope that indeed Jesus fulfilled what he came to do. And we have to be encouraged often, because there's so much that happens where we can get distracted and focus on the problems rather than the possibilities. And so Peter certainly recognized this. The horrible events leading up to Jesus' crucifixion are still so painful, even though they know the resurrection has taken place, that people are traumatized. And rather to give in to hopelessness and negativity, Peter is trying to lead them to a much better place. And he knows that it is difficult to do that because of all the intensity of the recent events. Certainly Good Friday, where we memorialize the crucifixion, is horribly intense. But Easter is intense for a better reason, life from death. But it's still very, very intense. And so Peter is doing what any good leader would do under these circumstances. He has to confront the reality of the situation, but not leave people without hope. Indeed, he has to interject it He has to remind them. And we have to be reminded in a similar way, just through everyday life, because it can drain. It can be such that we focus on the challenges more than on the conquering of those challenges. And certainly with God's Spirit, we have what we need to be victorious over all that will hold us back. And first and foremost, it's often our own thinking that is to blame, if anything, because we find our way in patterns of perceiving everything in life through a habit of our own creation. And that often can be negative for us. We often will perceive things that have a dark and dangerous message. And because of that, we can be held back. We can fail to experience the joy that we can otherwise feel. And so we do have to engage in a reprogramming of our thinking patterns. And in fact, as if we needed any more support and encouragement to do so, modern psychology also teaches us, often through cognitive behavioral therapy, that how we think will determine how we act. And if our lives don't seem to be going in the direction where we know it is best for us, then rather than just pointing a finger out there into the world for many sources of our difficulties, we have to work on our thinking, how we respond to things. We can't control what happens in the world, but we have much more control over how we respond to them. And of course, Peter knew this intuitively because it makes sense. If people are thinking bad thoughts, then they're likely to act in a way that is in accordance with those bad thoughts, making poor decisions, not treating people well. And that is not helpful for anyone. So we here in the wake of Easter, the most powerful time of our church holy days, can think, oh, all right. So am I at least on course to be where I need to be with how I think about things? Now, thinking positively does not mask harsh realities. We certainly don't want to be in denial, because that is also terrible. We want to be grounded in the way things are, in truth, and reality, in fact. But if things are bad, rather than giving up hope or dwelling in that dark place, and possibly even despairing, which would not be good, we want to come up with a plan, a way to persist with positivity despite how bad things may seem to be. And Peter certainly offered his audience a way just like this to move forward. He summarized the great events. He was able to put into proper context this terrible disappointment of Jesus leaving them, but reminding them it is, of course, a positive thing. He was raised up, as he said he would, triumphant over death. And you can't get more positive than that. When the number one horrible reality we all face, I guess you could say our own mortality, our own death, is something that when we place it in the proper context becomes a triumph, because we know that Jesus will similarly raise us up, spiritually speaking, from this life into the next. And we can go all the way back to the beginning of this year, when that is the time customarily that people set their goals, or at the very least they reflect on the previous year and they say, where do I want to be? We can ask ourselves, where do each one of us want to be when we get to the end of 2026? And perhaps we can review some less than optimal decisions that we made last year, and we decide that we want to make better decisions in 2026. And of course, we've even had the 40 days of Lent to make adjustments. That certainly is a time where we are reflecting, pondering, considering our lives. Well, here we are in the wake of Easter. Another chance. Of course, every day is a chance. It's just that when we go through these major events, like turning of the calendar, the new year, Lent, Easter, they are all little signposts, little wake-up notices that we can take so that we can stop and think, wow, am I thinking about my life, about reality, even more broadly in the way that I should be? In fact, we might even think, am I on that journey to become the best version of myself? You talk about self-improvement. Well, you can't think of anything better than that, because if God's with us, then we know that as we are on that path to become the best version of ourselves, then we're going to be better able to fulfill God's mission and purpose on this earth, the Great Commission to go out and preach life and love to every living creature. Jesus was very clear before he left that that was what we're supposed to be doing. So there's no ambiguity. And some would say, well, there's no excuse. Again, except our way of thinking about things. And so let us indeed take the clear, powerful message that God continues to give us to love our neighbors as ourselves, to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. These great summaries of Jesus' teachings, they're unmistakable, they're powerful. They tell us exactly what God values and what we are supposed to be doing. But of course, it's putting them into practice that is so difficult. And indeed, it is difficult. And we don't belittle how challenging it is to take these simple words about loving neighbor as self, about doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. They are so easily spoken, but like many profound truths, they are so difficult to actually practice. And so let us strive to put them in practice, because as we do so, as we love our neighbors, we are going to be on that journey of becoming the best version of ourselves, because love will set us free from whatever holds us back, including ourselves. That old saying, we got to get out of our own way. We are the biggest hurdle that we face to enacting that gospel message that Jesus gave all of us to fulfill while we still are able to walk this earth. And so let us be thankful to Peter for clarifying things, for speaking to his friends and those who felt bereft of Jesus, who was taken away, who was up in heaven after his brief journey here on earth. And we can all call upon the Almighty to empower us, to help us to overcome our hesitancy, to work on our weaknesses so that they do not, even together, keep us from purposing to become that best version of ourselves, to share love with every living creature. And as we do so, indeed, we will help folks who are very much walking in a darkness, in a place where they are not helping themselves or others as much as they could if they would be set free by the power of God's love. That great redemptive presence of the Spirit of Almighty that accompanies each of us wherever we go. We are thankful for this time to be spiritually empowered, and let us continue through every moment going forward. May God continue to bless us. Amen.